Hey guys, and welcome to Top Channel 1-on-1. Yeah, this is what we're going to be recreating. So this is a short from Kendrick Lamar's All the Stars music video. This video is really packed with a lot of effects that we can try and study and see how if we can recreate them in Blender. We can further study the video and see what other projects, what other things we can add. But yeah, this is the effect I did. We're not going to use any plugins or add-ons. We're just going to use raw Blender to pull this off. So let's jump in. All the project files are going to be available on my Patreon page, Gumroad, and my YouTube membership page. So if you just hit the join button, you should be able to access the project files and the other projects I've worked on. It's a fairly simple setup. You can see what we have here. I have a few characters here in the background, and they're all facing the boat. And whenever I move the boat, they all try to face the character. This is all rendered in Eevee, and the sky in the background is just a fake clouds. I think there are a ton of things we could learn in this. So yeah, let's jump in, and maybe I could start by showing you how I created the characters. Okay, so I know I said no add-ons, but I'm just going to use my asset library just to quickly import a character from my library. You can use the asset browser for that. I just choose this because it's much faster. But yeah, so this is a character I got off a Mixamo, so it's a free character you can get. We don't need the pants since we are going to be mostly seeing the top part of the characters. You can see for optimization purposes, I removed the bottom just to make it easier on my PC. So yeah, the next thing we can do is animate this have this animated as a wave. So I'm going to come here and just do a quick animation here. Now let's start adding some keyframes. We don't need to add a lot of keyframes. I'm just going to select these two, turn on in-video origins so that I can rotate these amateurs by in-video origins. Just bring back the last keyframe to make sure that everything is looping. Yes. The first keyframe should be the last keyframe for everything to loop correctly. Yeah, that's good enough for me. Okay, we need a few extra characters. I'm going to bring in another character. I'm going to bring in this guy here. Just remove his armature. And because I don't want to recreate the animation again, I'm just going to Ctrl P with automatic weights, and that should give him the same animation. I just need to make sure that this is, let me first turn off the keyframes. Make sure that he's the same scale, his body is the same scale, and he's positioned correctly to match. He doesn't have to match perfectly. We just want to get the joints closer, and since we're going to be mostly seeing the upper half, it doesn't matter that much if Ctrl P with envelopes. Yeah, now we have two characters animated. So I'm just going to select the last character we added, and then the armature. Shift D, make sure you have no keyframes. Shift D, so that we make a copy of this guy with his character. So you can even add another character if you want. So something like this. Make sure you remove the original armature that comes with that one, and just make sure that they line up correctly. To make sure they line up correctly, just tab into edit mode and make sure you have no keyframes on, and use Alt R to reset your pose into rest position so that you get that T pose. And now you can scale the character to make sure that the joints match correctly. They don't have to be perfect. We want something quick, so we don't really care too much about perfection. So I'm just going to again do the same, Ctrl P with automatic weights, and we have now 3 characters that are animated. Again, I'm going to select this and this, Shift D. Now you can see that we have 3 characters. Is it 4? What about this guy? Perfect. Again, we don't need the torso. We don't need the bottom half. That is just going to increase the polygon count unnecessarily. And remember, we need a lot of characters, so let's just remove that. Okay, so we have 3 characters, but they're giving us the same wave. We want some variation in their wave. So what I'm going to do, let me first remove this foot. So what I'm going to do is offset the animation a bit or add a few things. So first things first, I could slow this down, just scale this by 2 so that this is a bit slower. Make sure you're doing this in pause mode. So make sure you have all the keyframes selected and then scale twice. Yeah, now you can see that these are increased the keyframe count. I'm also going to grab these keyframes and just duplicate them. If you're duplicating the keyframes, you do it in pause mode, otherwise you won't copy all the keyframes you need. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this for these 2. I'm selecting the last keyframes. I'm not selecting the first one because the first one is the same as this, and if I do that, if I select that too, you'll see that I'm going to have a duplicate of frames, so that's why I'm selecting only the last keyframes, so that we have a nice continuous loop. Okay, now we have that. What we're going to do is just select each character with their armature and add them to a collection. I'm going to call it M1, select these, M2, and this is going to be M3. You also need to make sure that the mesh is parented to the armature, and now you can just select everything and reset them so that they're all in the middle of your world like that. Because now we're going to jump into geometry nodes and instance them onto a plane. This is the simplest thing in geometry nodes. You could choose to use the vertical system, but I've found a few issues with that. It's hard to get the rotation to look right. So I'm just going to select a mesh here and apply the scale. If you're new to geometry nodes, don't worry. This is the simplest setup you can do for geometry nodes. So we're just going to distribute some points on the mesh like that. So it turns the mesh into points like that. And each point we have is going to be a character. So to do that, we're just going to instance on points, instance on points like that. And the instances we want are the collections we have just created. So this M1, M2, and M3. So I'm just going to bring them in here. So M1, M2, and M3. I can even switch these off. And if we preview this, you can see that these are our characters, and they all come in animated like that. And they're all coming in as animated instances like that. Now you can connect one of these. That's too many. So let me do 2. One thing I found is that if you have the armatures, the bonds showing, it slows down the viewport quite a lot for some reason. So I'm going to come into all of these and just select the armature and go to the display, under visibility, turn off show in viewport, come back to this, show in viewport off, and come back to this, show in viewport off, and that will make it easy for us to work in the viewport without lagging. So yeah, we have that, but yeah, we have this one character in, and we can switch out and have this character or this character. If you have more than 3, that's okay. You can just all bring them in, and what we can do is just use a join geometry. So you can combine this into this geometry like this, and now use that instead here. Now you can see each particle has 3 instances, but if you use pick instance, now it will just have a random character per face, so they won't be intersecting, and they will all be, you can see we're starting to see the effect we want to make. Okay, so the next thing is to have them face an object. So I'm going to add, yeah, I use a bot. Let me just use this. Actually, to make this even easier, I'm just going to add an empty like that. and just make sure that these are all facing the empty. So to do that, I'm going to select the empty, drag into, let me pin this setup so that whenever we select another object, it doesn't go off, it doesn't disappear. So I'm going to select the empty and just drag that in. Let me call this target. Now to get these characters, all of these to face the point, to face the empty, all you have to do is get the location of your empty by using the object info and subtract it from the position of each point or of each character. So this node here gives you the position of each character. So you're going to use a vector math and just subtract the two vectors and then align Euler to vector. So now I can just use this as the new rotation. So now you can see we get something that works, but we need to figure out the right axis. Okay, so now they seem to be pointing exactly where we want, but they're also, yeah, I guess this could work as a good animation. Look at that. But we don't want them to, we just want them to face, not rotate completely to face the object. So to do that, we have to cancel out the Z position of this object. So I'm just going to come here and just do a multiply, multiply everything. Yeah, so you can see now, yeah, except we need to, yeah, so we have cancelled out the Z rotation by multiplying it by 0 here. So instead of, so they're not always facing this when it goes up, but they can face it like this. So we are basically creating a track to constraint, just disabling the Z component. So if we have the Z component, they do that. So when we move this up and down, that will happen. But if we zero it out by multiplying this, if I move this up and down, it doesn't have any effect. But when I move this on the x-axis, the characters try to track this. Now we just have to get the right axis. I think it's, it is this axis, but originally the characters are facing the wrong direction. So we have to come in here and add a transform node to make sure that they're rotated correctly. Let's go to the top and rotate them until they are facing. Yeah, you can see now they are all facing the board, which is great. So if we play the animation, you can see they're always facing the board. If I move the empty, now basically I can parent this empty to the board like that, Control P, and now I can give the board a slide. Let's look at this from our camera view. We need to look at some lighting. Let me switch from cycles to Eevee, and the sky is going to be completely dark. And one thing I liked about the render is that they're all wearing black. So what I'm going to do is just go back to the original characters. So these collections here, and you can have the characters in a collection. Let me call these people or crowd. Let me call this crowd. Disable that for a second. So I want all of these characters to wear black. So let's go to the material shader. Good thing is that this character has the shirt in a separate material. So I can separate the material for the shirt and just make it dark. We don't need the specular or these maps except the normal map. And then we can go to the next character, which is this guy. Just select the top face, just keep it as it is, just duplicate this material, and I'm just going to assign that to that, and I can just simply make it dark. The shirt is a bit hard to separate. Actually, it may not be. Okay, so the shirt is part of the rest of the body. So to separate that, because the topology of this is really good, I can just add an edge loop there, maxim, and another one around the shirt here. Control E, maxim, and here, Control E, maxim, And now I can use L to just select that shot, and I just assign it a new material, just like that. We look at how this looks now. So if we go to the crowd again, you can see, yeah, it's starting to look quite good. Yeah, one other thing I did in my version is I randomized their race, their skin color. So to do that was very easy. So I can just go back to the original characters. Yeah, you can randomize the race a bit. For example, for this guy, this is the head. So you can do an object info node output, and you can use a ramp and use a hue and saturation. Connect this to the color and connect this to the value, and that should give you a wide range of skin tones. So you can even use constant here to get a different range, and something like that. If we should see a range of races, let's see. Is it? Yeah, it's working. You can see that, and I can copy this node setup, hide my crowd again. Yeah, so you can see the variation we are starting to add there. So now we can scale up this, and more particles will be added. And look at that. We already have something. So another thing I did in my lighting, I didn't want to light every area. So what I did is just use area lights like this, just to light up small areas, and I even added a custom distance so that I can further limit how much. I think it adds some visual interest to your crowd, and then you also would have to light up the boat. Then my version, I added a boat, and also added this guy with a cloth simulation, and the cloth simulation was very simple. So I just had to search for another character. I think I got this standing guy. So yeah, we have a character like that, and now what I did is added cloth simulation on top of him, which was very simple. All you have to do is just add a plane like this. You can hide the crowd because it slows down your viewport a bit. So when you are working on heavy things like cloth simulations, you can just unhide them for a bit. Make sure it's covering the head. Can give this a collision, and this a cloth. If I play back, everything falls down like that. But I want these faces here to be pinned. So vertex group and the cloth, we need to set that up as the pin group. Hit play, and we have something like that. Can give him a dark material. Now we have something that looks interesting. But the issue is that at frame 1, the cloth starts off flat like that. We don't want that. We want it to start around here. So what I'm going to do is just apply the cloth here, so that we start at this frame, and then again re-add the cloth simulation and the pin group. But now the initial state of the cloth is going to be there. And you can parent this to the empty, so that is moving with the board like that, which makes things more interesting. Then what else? I think the last thing I did was added the sky. The sky was just a layer of these planes, images on a plane. So you can see, yeah, so what I'm doing is just importing an image. Let me first turn off bloom and disable the compositor. So you can see it's just an image like that. I wanted to get the same coloring as this, so that's why you see I added some color correction to this image. It had this pink that I didn't want, so I added this to make it more orange, and again just adding some RGB curves to match the color to the reference image we have here. then added that, passed that into animation to get that glowy sky in the background. But it wasn't enough. I wanted some clouds moving without doing any volumetrics, because that takes too much time. So what I did is just using the old trick of scaling the background a bit and moving it, so we get the illusion of movement. Same trick, I just used an image like this, and because I wanted the clouds to be see-through, so I didn't also want these sun to come through the image, because we already have that in the other image. In this image we have, what I did, I used a transparency mixed with some translucence, and I just used a color ramp to determine what parts of this sky show, and you can see I only needed to show the cloud, so I can remove the sun and the ground by just moving this, so making it that I'm remaining with just the clouds. And then now blending the two. If you're using Eevee, you have to set this to alpha blend and make sure you have no shadows. This is see-through. Did the same trick with another image here, so layering up the same things and animating them at different speeds, which gave me the illusion of a cloud movement like that at a very cheap cost. And also added some extras in the background there. You can see the same characters, but just spread out more because they are far in the background. I don't have to add as many since the camera is never going to see them. And I think that's it. The rest is just rotate. I parented the lights onto this empty, so the lighting is like spotlights are around, spotlights lighting the characters. So I animated this, and that gave me some, I think, better lighting there. Another extra thing I did was viewport compositing. I just did some color grading, so without any viewport compositing, everything looks a bit dull like that. There is no glow, and by the way, make sure you have some glow, some bloom. Don't need screen space reflections or ambient occlusion. It's just going to slow down things. So the thing I added was glare to add some bloom like that. Then I realized that there was too much saturation, so I added this hue and saturation node to reduce, this hue correct node to reduce the amount of yellow I had there. So you can see I'm pulling that down to remove some of the red and yellow that I have. So that hue and correct, so it gave me the same color effect. It looks closer to this, so then I added some color balance just to add a layer of color to match things around, and that's how we ended up with this. Thank you for watching. Project files are going to be on my membership page. Just hit the YouTube join button and I should have access to them, and or on my Patreon page or on my Gumroad. All links are going to be in the description. You can see no add-ons, nothing. You just have to using raw Blender as it is. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video.